CFL Coast to Coast, Andrew and Bobby with you guys to break down Week 17 in the CFL, Canadian Football League, as well as some future bets. We'll talk a little bit about what happened in Week 16 and much, much more. As the season is getting closer and closer to playoff time, and I know it's a small league, guys, but teams are fighting for, I don't want to say playoff spots necessarily, Bobby, but playoff positioning, where they're going to fall maybe. How about Hamilton? They've got Toronto's number. I don't know what's going on in the CFL with some of these matchups, but you've got some comments about the MOP. But how are you doing today, and how was your Week 16?
It was week 16. It was okay. You realize Dave Dickinson. I thought he quit on the team 2 weeks ago. He quit on the team in the last minute of that game, having Jake Mayer throwing shotgun on 3rd and 1. You have the best short yardage quarterback in the league, and he just doesn't want to win games. So that's 2 games he's chosen to lose on his own, and he's not hiding it, making bad field goal decisions in the first quarter like some other teams' coaches are. He's blatantly giving up games. So I don't know if that's what you want. If I was a Stamps fan, I'd be pretty upset.
It's weird. All I know, I was excited. I did a free play video at Wager Talk. I talked about it last week on our show. I was on the over in the Calgary game, and we saw some points in that one. And it just seems like some of these teams, whether or not they're winning or losing, they're going to drag it out till the fourth quarter. And as you said, the coaching staff will make them look a little bit foolish. Winnipeg, the real Winnipeg is starting to stand up. Maybe the real Edmonton is starting to stand up. Who knows? But we're going to get into it obviously in Week 17. But it's so funny to me, as is sports betting, how quickly a team can go from being hated on by people to now being their favorite team to bet. And I feel like that's Edmonton. Edmonton became a popular bet just weeks after everybody loved betting against them. It seems like it's so interesting how quickly people can adopt the team as their team, and then now it might be too late because they started off the season making money for people. The second Trey Ford took over, and then MBT was making the money. So it's interesting. Here we are. There's still plenty of time in the CFL, guys, to make money with us. We know there's some other sports going on now. I'm pumped, of course, with NHL coming back. Hey, I was betting NHL preseason last night. You guys know that I'm ready to go for that. Bobby, the thing about NHL preseason, I will say, it's crazy. If you bet a game at 2 p.m. Eastern, by the time 6 p.m. Eastern hits, you might literally be saving yourself 30, 40 cents. It's unbelievable. So it's hard to recommend picks on that. But with that being said, with the playoffs coming up, it is a good time to look at futures once again. So any thoughts on futures overall, whether it's division, whether it's Grey Cup, or the most outstanding player? Anything for us?
I don't think there's anything in the Grey Cup market right now. You're better off just money line parlaying. Even the Argos at 7-1, like they're going to be underdogs probably 3 games in a row, right? If they win the Grey Cup. So nothing there. And then over the weekend and even yesterday, there was a lot of talk about most outstanding player. And I kind of suggested a couple, and I was surprised that these numbers are still how they are, because at the end of the day, this is a vote. And when you have votes, you have people like Joe Flacco winning comeback player of the year from coming back from just not being a very good quarterback. DeMar Hamlin dies and he somehow loses the vote, right? So a narrative develops, and I think there's big opportunity here. You have Cody Fajardo as the runaway favorite, and I think he's just kind of a placeholder. He's had a good season. He hasn't had he's not standing out, right? You couldn't say that the Owls are winning because of him. They won with Davis Alexander too, right? Am I saying Cody's not a good quarterback? Of course not. Cody's a good CFL quarterback. And in the East, they nominate one player, and it's going to be him unless Hamilton makes the playoffs. Bo Levi Mitchell could take that nomination away from him. People are saying he was benched. Well, I don't know. He was benched by Milanovic in the heat of the moment, and ever since then, Milanovic has been making some other bad decisions as well. He's not my boy anymore in terms of situational going forward on third downs. He's taking field goals from the 4-yard line. I don't like what he's doing there anymore. So if he if he doesn't make the playoffs, then it's Fajardo for sure. And it's usually given to a quarterback, but also like from somebody from a team with a winning record. So it's likely Fajardo there, but there was some value up until today. I've checked, and these basically have tanked. There's on 365 still has some old numbers. I have no problem telling you guys to go pick off some stale numbers there, because if hey, when TSN makes their bets, FanDuel's not going saying, hey, that's a bad number. That's a bad number. Take advantage of what you can when you're betting CFL or anything, right? So last time a non-quarterback won was Brandon Banks. I think it was 2019. And it was basically because every quarterback got injured. I think Bethel Thompson even was a backup. He came in there. So Bo Levi Mitchell is basically the only quarterback that hasn't gotten injured. He's the only real standout quarterback, and he's not really on a great team this year. He kind of defaults him out of it if they don't make the playoffs. So you'll have Fajardo. The West, you're likely, I think you're going to have Oliveira from the Bombers. Is there, if you have Oliveira against Fajardo, is there a narrative there? Hey, Oliveira should have won last year. He's had 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Streveler poached all of his touchdowns up until last week, and Oliveira could get a few more this week as well, or the rest of the season. And they're likely going to win the West. So I think he's going to be their nominee. He was like 60-1 yesterday. He's still 30-1 on 365. I think he's come down to about 15 or 12, something like that on FanDuel. I don't like that number. But he's the option for Winnipeg. And then the Riders, I think you have Roland Milligan. There's been a lot of talk about him throughout the whole season. And in a team where they don't really have a standout player, Harris maybe, but there could be the narrative of the writers. It's all media that votes on this stuff. Is it time to give it to a defensive player? And they haven't given it to a defensive player in 10 years. It's not unheard of, which is also a good sign. It's not like the NFL where they just give it to the quarterback every year. But Milligan was, I don't know, 80-90-1. He's not even on 365, and I think they took him off for that reason. But I think there still might be some value there, around 30-1 on these other sites. I think it's a 3 or 4 person race. Maybe if you can get Bo Levi at a huge number, but he's not 101 anymore like he was yesterday. So I think when there's this much uncertainty, if Fajardo wins, fine. But I think it'd be stupid not to take some chances at 100-1, at 90-1, at 60-1 on people that have a good chance of being the nominee. There's not many to choose from. Rourke's not going to get it. VA's not going to get it. Drew Brown's not going to get it. All these favorites, they don't actually have a shot here. If Rourke's going to play like 7-8 games all year. He didn't.
Yeah.
7-8 games a couple years ago, and he had way better numbers, and he basically got disqualified for that. So just a few thoughts I had. Again, I'm shocked that the numbers have finally caught up on most sites. But if you could find some old stale numbers for Bo Levi, for Milligan, for Oliveira, I'd jump on them while you can, and then you can maybe hedge back at like a -200 on Fajardo. But again, I don't know how much money they're going to let you bet on MOP. I'd be surprised if they'll take $200 on Fajardo. Take your $50 shots here and there on these big underdogs. So there's my 5 minutes on MOP.
No, great stuff. And of course, we always stress about the different books you can use, or not just use, but to utilize the best value. And I think that, obviously if someone bets a sport every week, like we do with the CFL, or if you're betting a money line sport, baseball, hockey every single day, you want to be shopping around. If you're betting a -150 when this book offered a -130, long term, you're hurting yourself big time. But I think, it's one thing for someone to say, hey guys, look, I use 1 or 2 sports books. It's all I use. And I think that with futures, and I've done this myself, I'll say, where there's been books that I might not use on a day in, day out basis, where I've shopped around and locked in a future on that book. Right. So guys, if you are one of those people that only uses 1 or 2 sports books, it doesn't hurt to upload or to check out what other books that you are able to use are offering for a certain bet, because I like Brady Oliveira just like you do, Bobby. Um, but there's a big difference between 50 to 1, or sorry, 30 to 1 and 15 to 1. That's a massive difference. And I think that what he's brought to his team, you look at the quarterback injuries, you look at, and I think that, I mean, I don't want to say shame on us, because I mean, how could we have seen this coming? But at the end of the day, he's kind of had to be the unsung MVP for this team this year. Pass catching role, running back, like he's doing everything for them. They still have a good defense, as you know, I talked about a lot throughout the start of the season, that this is a team that was going under. I think it was at one point like 1-8 in their first 9 games to the under. And a lot of that was just them running the ball into the ground, playing good defense. So I do like that one quite a bit. I don't think Rourke or any quarterback there wins it. I see Justin McGinnis there, William Stanback. I mean, Trevor Harris, I don't think a guy that is on a team that, what did they go through, a 6-game or 5-game losing streak? I'm not saying you can't win it if you have, they've just struggled. He was injured, and then when he came back, he was still playing decent football, but his team wasn't winning games, so I don't think he could be in the picture.
If they had an MOP of first quarters, I think Harris would be your winner.
Yeah, and then let's see here. I'm just gonna pull up the champion. Yeah, so I've kind of been touting Toronto for the past little while, and I'm gonna tell you guys one more time. I'm gonna say this: they're 10 to 1 now. So I think the last time I mentioned on the show they were 8 to 1. I know it might sound kind of crazy because I'm giving them out now at a better value price, but this also means that they've gone down in the books rankings. I still think that they're built for cold weather football. I think they've got a good run game. I think they can win low scoring games. Whereas I think a team like Hamilton that beat them, and I know it doesn't get as cold out east anyway, but I think that if you gave me a playoff game right now, Toronto versus Hamilton, Bobby, and you gave me the same line we saw on the weekend, I'd probably lay 5.5, 6 with Toronto in a playoff game against Hamilton tomorrow. And people might call me crazy for that because Hamilton has taken care of Toronto throughout the regular season, but I still think 10 to 1 odds is a good one there. It's interesting. Both 10 to 1 on Saskatchewan and Toronto to win the Grey Cup. Any thoughts on either of those two?
10's a pretty good number for the Argos. Maybe that could justify it. I like them. I think they're the second best team in the East. If they beat Ottawa and they go to Montreal, what's the spread there? I don't know, like Montreal by 4.5, maybe max. So you kind of just have to figure out if you're correlated or if you're not correlated. If your money line parlays are going to get you to that 10 number, I don't know if they will. So maybe 10's the best you're going to get, the best way of attacking it. Riders are tough. I don't know. All these teams I wouldn't want to bet on any team in the West. I think the Riders, Bombers, or Lions could all any of them could come out of that. And the Riders have been so kind of unpredictable as well. Their defense isn't as great as everybody thinks it is, and their offense can either turn it on or completely stall. So I think if there's any future out there, I agree with you. I think it's the Argos.
All right, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel. We've been pretty steady here every week on Tuesdays going live. We hope we've made you guys some money. I think we cashed some tickets last week on the show, that's for sure. If you're watching on X, do us a favor and repost this, retweet it, whatever you call it. Try and spread the word. I get it, college football is here, NFL is here. You guys like watching that maybe more than CFL, but we like making money in the CFL, so hopefully you guys can join us for that. And hopefully I'm in for a big week this week. I'm seeing the board very well. And I wish I released everything I liked over the last 3-4 weeks. Would have been a really good time, but we're doing well on the show. And so I hope you guys are enjoying it. And let's try and get the likes up, because likes are actually more important to me than subscriptions. Subscribers look cool, but likes help the algorithm. Likes help us get more views, guys. So help us out with that. All right, Bobby, let's not waste any more time. Let's blast through this card. I'm still looking at some more stuff before I release many plays. I've got one or two I like right now, though. Elks, Bombers, it's a rematch. We see so many rematches in the CFL all the time, really. But we're seeing the home and home, second half of it. Like I said, the real Winnipeg stand up because they are the team that's been successful the last many years. And yet Edmonton was, what a small dog last week. Winnipeg flexes their muscles defensively and offensively. And now we're seeing -4.5 this week as Winnipeg are at home. Total at 49.5. Any thoughts on this one?
Not really. Last week there was a lot of support for Edmonton, including myself. Unfortunately, so was the CFL writers. I don't know who else. He told me the power rankings were agreeing with me or something like that. Everything's so ridiculous. Everything was working against me, and I still stuck by my pick of the Elks. So there was a lot of the money. The money did come in on Winnipeg on game day, so it ended up closing around that 3. But like 5 turnovers by the Elks, like I'm not convinced that the Elks were the wrong side of that. Kind of fell apart for them in the fourth quarter. But if you're turning over the ball over, I think in the first half, it was 5 turnovers. They were down 3-0. So I kind of think this number is where it is for a reason. 4.5. I think Winnipeg maybe should be around 5. Nothing for me on this. MBT likely to start. That doesn't change the number that much. Maybe a slight improvement over Ford, but the people have stopped talking about Trey Ford, that's for sure. And I don't know if he's fully recovered from that injury, but I think they have the better shot with MBT right now. But there's nothing I like on this game. I think the number's right where it should be.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards the under here in this one. It's kind of the same old story with me when you look at this Blue Bombers team. Yeah, you talk about Trey Ford. Geez, I mean, it's funny because I know that there have been health issues on that team, quarterback wise, with Trey Ford going down. But what's interesting is the team brings him back after he's healthy again, and then you look at it now and you kind of think, has it been a distraction with that team? We talked about the distraction in BC. How about the distraction in Edmonton? Is that a problem with them? But looking at last week's score, 27-14, limiting the Elks to just 14 points, I think we see an even more scrappy version of that same game here. 49.5 being the total. I just think that Winnipeg does a great job of preventing themselves of getting into a trading points type of contest here. 49.5. I think the 49.5 is really reliant on the Elks putting up some points. I don't think they want to play a game that's first to 26, 27 points wins the game. So we'll see about that one. If you're playing the Elks, I recommend playing the first half. The number's going to be smaller, but I think that, the more time these two teams play together, the more opportunity for the Elks to make mistakes. And I know the Bombers have really they've caused problems for bettors this year because every game people expected the Bombers to be the same Bombers, right? Like if you think at the start of the year, Bobby, if we had a spreadsheet of all the games that they've been involved in, I think the ones that they've probably lost the most ATS were when they were big favorites. Would you agree? Like -7, 8, these big numbers. But when you catch the Bombers in 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5 point spread range, I feel like that's where they've had success.
Yeah, the overreaction to them is kind of where you get burned. Like we were always higher on them than people were, but no matter what, they're the Bombers, right? They're not going to be big dogs or even if they're getting disrespected, they're still going to be favored by those few points. So I think that's like right around this number. Like I could easily see the Bombers just blowing them out, right? So if I was to force a bet on this, it'd definitely be on Winnipeg. I just don't know what Edmonton is right now. Apparently the CFL simulator seems to think they're going to win the Grey Cup, but it doesn't even look good for them to make the playoffs. If they don't win this game, I think they're done, right? So I don't know. Bombers have been pretty profitable throughout this season. Just kind of steal 76ers line or trust the process. Like they know who they are. Maybe they had their Patriots year, the Belichick kind of strategy of just starting off slow and then, hey, it's a CFL. Like almost 70% of the teams make the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I mean exactly, and they're just trying to get there. It's about how they finish at the end of the season, not as much about kind of how they are in weeks 1 to 5. I'm going to ask you a plain and simple question. Would you talk anybody out of a BC and Winnipeg moneyline parlay this week?
I would, because the BC money line right now is about like 350. And if you tease it down to just a half point, you're paying like 280 on that. So I don't like. Hey, that's a TSN bet there. That Bombers money line that tends to
Well,
burn people.
the only thing is, you're right, and feel free to throw jabs at me too. I can take it. But who do you? I saw you tweet out a teaser the other day, or earlier today. I guess you could be teasing certain teams up, but if you look at like who's your dance partner? I can't remember who your dance partner is.
Toronto up to 8.
Okay, Toronto up to 8. Okay,
I just think Winnipeg,
I usually like getting
love
the hook.
I love
like
betting on the Bombers, but I don't know if there's an opportunity this week.
No, you're right. I mean that the math is especially with BC, like the math there, the money line number is way too high for the -7, which is definitely a good point by you, and it's something that people out there that are learning to do the math on this kind of stuff. You need to look at the point spread. You can actually go on certain websites and just search up like point spread, money line. How do I phrase this? Like what a point spread equals in the money line, and obviously 360 is what they're showing on DraftKings is ridiculous. I just looked at that.
I think that's huge for a 7, or 6.5.
Shouldn't be. If anything, that should be an indicator to probably take BC -7. You know what I mean? Like that should probably tell you to just take the spread, because there's no way a money line of -7 should be that. I know what you mean with the Toronto +2. I like to get a 2.5 to bring it up to 8.5 with teasers. For some reason, when I'm playing 2.5 and then getting them up with teasers, I like to get that hook there. But Hamilton, BC, a lot of times I've talked to you about these totals. Like right now, the lowest total on the board is 49.5, and that's the first game of the week that I actually like the under on. This one's 53.5 is the highest one on the board. I can't really see it going under, and if it does go under, I think that means Hamilton covers. But I think that BC puts up points. It's just a matter of if Hamilton trades with them in order for it to go over the total. Would you agree with me there? I think Hamilton has struggled. I don't have their past scores in front of me, but I'm kind of just talking out loud here. I don't think Hamilton's put together back-to-back good weeks quite often this season. Does that sound right to you?
No, and I think we're at like the high point for the Ticats here. This reminds me a lot of when Ottawa came out to BC, and they finally convinced me to back them on that game, and it was embarrassing. It was awful to be like it was me and Raquel Armstead just steaming on the sidelines there.
That video of you in the background, the video of you.
It wasn't a good feeling, right? So I think this is it's almost like carbon copy. I'm pretty sure the Red Blacks were on a bit of a heater going into that game in BC. Ticats say this is the highest that people have been on them all year. Well, I think they were giving up 6.5 to the Argos last week. I don't know if that's the right number, but they're getting the same number in BC, and I think BC is a little better of a home field. I like this in the teaser leg just because the money line. The reason I didn't go anymore, I didn't get the 8.5 with the Argos, was because if I paid the 10 cents for that 8.5, I'm bringing BC down to 0, and I'm very confident there's not going to be another tie this season.
A lot of ties,
so that's man. And then who knows if they'll even void that if you're most Vegas sports books would void the whole teaser if you end up pushing on one leg. But I don't know. Hamilton was getting like 8.5 opener. That was a lot of points. I don't want to be on them. I don't want to be agreeing with the CFL Power Rankings here. They'll tell you Hamilton is a better team than BC. Well, then why are they getting a touchdown? So
yeah,
I'm happy to not be taking that huge number. I'm happy to have BC in a teaser leg, and I don't think it's going to move too far off this 7 points that I think it should be. So I think it's teaser or nothing on this. I'm going to stay away from the Ticats. All signs are pointing to not take them. The CFL Power Rankings, the heater they're kind of on, similar to the Red Blacks traveling out west. I'm going to learn my lesson from last week in the Elks.
Those Elks. I'm trying to just pull up to look at what some books have as the team total there for BC, because I feel like that could be a good one. Interesting. I'm seeing like the consensus across 3 different ones I looked at is 30.5. And of course 23.5-ish, 22.5 for Hamilton there for BC. But it kind of goes to my point though. It makes sense, the total being 53.5, right? That kind of, it kind of makes sense. The total going over all depends on what Hamilton does, right? Because if you think about it,
do you like Hamilton at 23 then?
Well, I think I like BC on the spread. Like I obviously love your teaser leg, but I actually think that my if I were to give you one sentence to one thing about this game is I don't trust Hamilton to put back-to-back good efforts together. And so I think that I would stay off the, if the reason what I'm saying is if I think that if anybody likes BC to cover the point spread, you might as well just take the team total. But at this point, when I pulled up I was hoping to see a 29.5. And I know it doesn't sound like it's that important. It's 1 point, but in betting it really is. And, if they win the game like 30-17 or something, you would absolutely be, banging your head against the wall that you lost by a hook on that one. So that's interesting. All right, Ottawa and Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's been a team that I've kind of liked all year. I tried to bet on them when they didn't have Trevor Harris. Then I started betting against them, and it worked out. And then I went back on them again, and then I realized, you know what? This team, they are an under team. They are an over team, and especially a second half over team, as I mentioned to you last week. And that's what happens to them a lot. And as you pointed out with Trevor Harris, they're not as much a second half team because of their team. They're a second half team because they give up points in the second half. So 51.5 being the total there. I'm seeing 3 at most spots for that game. Have you seen any hooks at most books? I've seen some 3.5s, but it's pretty much the books that cater to favorites are showing 3.5, and then other books are showing just 3 even. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, looks like Drew Brown's not playing. He was in a boot today at practice. He was taken out last week, and people thought it was performance, and then found out it was an ankle injury, and maybe it was the same thing, right? He's been kind of off for the last few weeks. He's not the MOP 4th favorite like some books had him at as of yesterday. But it's also like, it's not a huge downgrade to Masoli. Masoli is still serviceable. We were able to kind of cash some tickets being on Masoli when everybody seemed to have written him off, chasing Dustin Crum around the league, saying how great he was. He was never great. He was never good. Masoli is a decent quarterback. So I don't think it's a huge drop off, but like Ottawa's been kind of decimated the last few weeks by injuries. Like their O-line's beaten up, linebackers. Their secondary's been pretty much injured all year, and they just lost, I think, another guy last week. Eli Stove. I don't even know if he's been relegated to kick returns now, but geez, you get 8 catches on your CFL debut, and you're just hawking punts the rest of the season. Yeah. So like, there's nothing to really like about this Red Blacks team. Like I don't really like anything about them anyway, but I think they're kind of stinking right now. And the only thing that's saving them is, I think, like you said, the Saskatchewan defense stinks too. And Ottawa offense hasn't been very effective lately. Even with Masoli, they kind of stalled out a few drives. So I like the Riders. I don't like this number. If you can find a 2.5, I'd definitely take that. But I haven't been able to find any um, to bite on that. And again, this is another good one going against the CFL Power Rankings. They have the Riders low and the Red Blacks high. So
Yeah.
I posted, I think last week, if you just blindly bet against the CFL Power Rankings every week, you'd be killing it. You'd be the most successful CFL bettor in Canada. So I like the Riders, but only a 2.5. Three's an important number, and definitely not with that hook 3.5.
I don't like to hear you say that because for me, like I always mention because I do shows, pretty much a day or the same day difference between you and Jeff, who I respect his opinions on numbers. He's not a CFL better like you and I, but he's taught me a lot about numbers. And he says respect the opening number, respect the numbers a little bit. Kind of like if they open -2.5, they're kind of inviting you to bet the Riders. If they open -3.5, they kind of are like, you know what, you're going to get 3.5 points with the road dog. You know what I mean? And to me, this is kind of a -3.5. I'm looking at DraftKings now, where think about what you just said though. You're talking about the CFL power ranking guys, right? Talking about the current CFL perception. Most people, I think, besides me and you, actually think the Red Blacks are pretty good. I think a lot of people think this Red Blacks team is better. And you know what? Maybe I can eat it because I've lost money. I've lost multiple units. I'd be having a fantastic year if you eliminated any big bet I made with Wager Talk over against the Red Blacks. But I think this number opening at -3.5 is respect towards this Rough Riders team. And if you look at really what they've done recently, what have they done to deserve this respect? Nothing. Right. So I think the bookmakers agree with me and you that they are better than the Red Blacks. Throw in a point or two, obviously, for home field advantage. But I almost respect the books more for opening this at 3.5 than I would if it was 2.5. Because they open at 3.5, Bobby, they're going to get Ottawa money. They open this 2.5. People are going to come in on Saskatchewan. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe people don't think like that, like you and I do, kind of with the odds and numbers with the CFL. But do you get what I'm saying? Like almost at 3.5, people are probably more tempted to say, I'm getting a field goal in the hook with the Red Blacks. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why I like the Riders, But I don't want you to be looking at me and laughing like, hey, they won by 3.
I don't. Well, hey,
I like
if you're on the 3, then fine. But like at least you're pushing, right? But
yeah,
it depends.
Yeah.
It depends who has these 3.5s, right? If Coolbet has a 3, like that doesn't help me, right?
no,
So
no.
you need to be able to get money down on these things, and if you can find, I think Pinnacle had it at like -115. Their 2.5 was almost 140. So I'm gonna kind of hold out again. Like I'm not like I've still got my warning on the Red Blacks, so it's like it's not like I'm gonna pull the full trigger on them. But any game involving them, I'm going to be extra cautious, probably for the rest of the year. I just need to stick by it. Been burned too many times on or against them.
Imagine us going against Ottawa this week and they get like 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recovery. They just do the same shit they keep doing.
Yep.
That would drive both of us insane. And then Alouettes Argos, you talked about that being the second leg, a second dance partner there with the teaser on the BC Lions. Interesting because, obviously they need this win. They need to play well in this one. Life has not been good for them. As much as we talk about Toronto versus Hamilton being a rivalry, is Toronto Montreal kind of a rivalry because what happened last year? You know what I mean? Like during the end of the season and the playoffs, would you say?
Yeah, this was Kelly's 5 interception game. Basically imploded. Like they were sailing the whole year. They had the number 1 seed locked up, I think, after 12 weeks or something. So they played 2 months of meaningless football, all to build up for that game, and he just laid an egg, right? So
Yeah.
I think Montreal, like obviously, I don't think anybody would argue they're the better team. I think this line should be closer to a pick, though, so that's why I worked them into that teaser. But Montreal hasn't really been able to move the ball. I don't know if they just need to play against the Argos D. I don't know if the Argos D is bad or if it was maybe just Bo Levi being good last week. So I'd like to get a 3 on those Argos. I'm not going anywhere near the Owls at this number. But if not, I'm fine just having the teaser, maybe a little bit at 2.5 if it doesn't move by the time kickoff comes.
I wouldn't talk anybody off the over in this game based on what I've seen from the Argos defense lately. You know, whether it's been Kelly throwing picks, whether it's been the defense giving up points. Because even when the Argos have looked good in certain games, I think back to that game that still haunts me, Toronto versus Ottawa a few weeks ago, that made me never want to be involved in a Red Blacks game again. Whether it was them actually doing good stuff or whether it was them picking off Kelly. You know, I saw CFL Twitter account saying, like, Kelly is seeing ghosts. He's seeing ghosts again, just like last year. And that, you know, piled up some points a little bit. But I'm right there with you. I agree. The thing is, I don't want to bet against Montreal to lose. Like, you know, and to me, in this point spread range, if Montreal, you know, I'm not, if I was playing Toronto here, I'd play the money line. I wouldn't just play the +2. So I'm with you. It's teaser leg or pass, and a lean towards the over. That's kind of what I'd say here. Potentially a first half over, because I have noticed in games involving both Montreal and Toronto, they kind of fizzle out in the second half. The run game gets involved, and kind of, you know, the Montreal team, it feels like mostly at home they run scores up. On the road, they're a little more respectful, I guess, in their own way. So maybe the first half over. I've noticed that actually as well in the NFL. Whether it's boneheaded decisions that I know would be driving you crazy. I don't know how much you're following the NFL, Bobby, but I feel like you'd have a stroke if you saw some of this stuff. Did you see the Falcons game on the weekend? Falcons Chiefs? Like, that was the guy, the coach, not just choosing to kick the ball, trust his defense, gets the ball back, could have been kicking for the win, but instead he had to go for a touchdown. They had 3 tries. It was like 2nd and 3, a 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, and they get stuffed. They run the same run play. I don't trust some of these teams, just same way I don't trust Toronto to have, you know, the coaching to settle a game down. But at the same time, first half over, Toronto. Honestly, I'm going to call that, even though you already tweeted it out, that's going to be a play that we both agree on. That teaser, I think, is a really good one, because whether or not Toronto wins or loses that game, I think they keep it close. And I think we both think that BC wins their game.
It's double like I'm going back, reloading a bit more on Pinnacle then. So I think Chris just came up with their numbers too, so it might be over there. Pinnacle and Bet Chris, if you're betting teasers, they pay they cost a lot cheaper than anywhere else out there. So
all right,
you'll save 20 cents on each teaser just by using those 2 sites.
I got a few more weeks to build that bankroll before I decide if I'm coming to see you for the Grey Cup. So keep a place warm for me. I'll let you know if I'm if I'm going to see you or not. For man, sure. You know what's funny is that I do a show every Tuesday night with Gabe Morency on Sports Grid, and he's from Quebec, so he's naturally a Montreal guy, but he cheers for a lot of the BC teams. He lives in Vancouver. And he goes, man, if the Alouettes don't make it and BC's not there, he goes, I'm selling my tickets. I'm not even going to this game. And right now, you don't even know. It could easily be, like you said, it could be Saskatchewan. It could be Winnipeg. We could see, hell, Ottawa, Toronto. I mean, who knows what's going to go on in the CFL this year, which is why, as you mentioned, you want to be taking the MOP plus money. You want to be taking some of these. Like, I think if you take Saskatchewan and Toronto 10-1, you're going to set yourself up on one of those for a quality hedge. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think, again, the Riders are so unpredictable, but hey, if BC doesn't make it, there's at least going to be a resale value on those Bombers or Riders fans. Those are the only 2 games where the Lions don't give us extra tickets under the table. So they kind of paper the stadium if we're not playing the Riders or the Bombers. I don't want to say we. I'm not one of those guys, but as a season ticket holder, they offer us a generous discount for extra tickets on games not involving those 2 teams.
I think you lost your we after you were caught on TV wearing a Red Blacks jersey at the game.
Yeah. No, I never was. I never want to be a we guy.
There's only one team in the world that I'm a we guy, and it's with the Montreal Canadiens. That is the team that I'm diehard. And everybody else, it's just whoever my money is on. All right, guys, that's week 17. Make sure if you just tuned in for the picks, make sure you go back and listen into Bobby's breakdown on some future breakdown or some future picks, MOP stuff. We're in agreement on the Brady Oliveira play, but don't just lock that in the first book that you see. If you're looking for it, it'll be under the CFL futures and then the awards section on most sports books that you use. So hope you guys got some good info out of us today. Let's cash that teaser. BC down, Toronto up. Hopefully we make you guys some money. We'll see you next Tuesday right here on Coast to Coast.